If you don't know who Dan Hartman is, I'm going to play a video. It's a hard video to watch. You should know who Dan Hartman is because he's been on the channel a number of times. I've talked about his story at length. Dan Hartman is the father of now deceased Sean Hartman, his son, who died at the age of 17 and change after having taken a Pfizer shot in order to be able to play hockey up in Ontario, Canada. This was during the mandates up in Canada when you needed to show full vaccine passport if you were over the age of 13 in order to have access to things like coffee shops, libraries, movie theaters, retail stores, and hockey rinks. And Sean Hartman, who was staying with his mother at the time, parents were divorced, unbeknownst to the father, not that that changes anything in terms of responsibility of Pfizer and the government, it adds a great degree of, an even greater degree of tragedy to this. Unbeknownst to Dan, the father, Sean, the son, gets a Pfizer shot. Unbeknownst to Dan, the father, the son, Sean, got very ill after the first shot, went to a hospital where he met a doctor to say he's feeling sick. He had orange bags under his eyes, you know, in terrible shape. Doctor on his notes that the kid had been recently vaccinated. I'm going to take that word back. Had recently gotten the COVID jab, gives him aspirin and whatever and sends him home. Kid, I don't know if he feels better really at any point, but gets discharged, and then 30 some odd days later, he's discovered dead next to his bed. The father didn't know that he had gotten the shot. The father didn't know that he had gone to the hospital. In the broad scheme of all of this, the father tried to file a malpractice claim against the doctor. That was tossed, even though the doctor noted that the kid had recently gotten the COVID jab, and they knew at the time what the heck was going on. There were no troponin tests ordered. There were no D-dimer tests administered to see if he had a clot, a stroke, myocarditis. Sent home and died in his sleep a few weeks later. The father filed a vaccine injury support program claim with the government, which was initially denied because there was no proximity, or they didn't, believe that the death was correlated to the COVID jab. He appealed that dismissal of the vaccine injury support program, the VISP, as they call it in Canada, after he had gotten, I forget which doctor it was, but he got one of the top doctors in the COVID scheme to confirm that there were spike proteins where they shouldn't have been, and that the proximate cause of death was related to the COVID jab. Hasn't gotten an answer on his appeal on the dismissal of his injury claim, for obvious reasons, because if the government were to recognize that the death resulted from the COVID jab, it would certainly add an argument or strengthen the claim against Pfizer, which the father has now taken for and on behalf of his son. Dan is suing Pfizer. He also sued the government of Canada, Health Canada, for the death of his son. And the lawsuit against Health Canada was dismissed. The government of Canada, and I'm not going to swear during this, the government of Canada, after having mandated the COVID shot so that young kids who were the most at risk for myocarditis and heart-related issues from this jab, so much more at risk than any risk from COVID infection itself, which incidentally they were not protected against regardless. The government of Canada, which imposed mandates, basically created medical apartheid in Canada, came out and sought the dismissal of his lawsuit against the government of Canada because arguing in law that the government had no duty of care. And the government of Canada successfully got the lawsuit against them tossed. The lawsuit against Pfizer is proceeding. I don't know what stage of the proceedings it's at, or whether or not there's going to be a pause as they appeal the dismissal of Health Canada from the lawsuit. But Health Canada managed to get itself excluded from the lawsuit. Now, you imagine, I talk about judicial corruption. The bar, the gentlemen of the bar protect the gentlemen of the bar, is what Robert Barnes often says on our Sunday shows. You're talking about the people who implemented this policy, who ratified this policy at the court level, now adjudicating on whether or not they can be held liable for the consequences of the policies that they mandated, enforced, coerced, And they say, no, we don't get held responsible because we have no duty of care. And then the federal judges who are appointed by them come around and say, yeah, you know what? You're right. You don't have any duty of care. I'm going to play this. It's 3.5 minutes, and I'm going to play it in its entirety and pause it. This is Dan Hartman. This is a man. Broken is not the word. And it doesn't imply fragility. There is no parent on earth who can ever get over, recover, or heal from the death of their child. None. And the only thing that can happen is you learn to or bear living with the agony and pain that every day brings when you wake up and you're not there with your son and your son is not there with you. This is a man who has been tortured, abused, and disregarded by the Canadian government, and is now being told, your lawsuit's out, and we also want court costs because you sued us. We got the suit dismissed, and we want that dismissal against us maintained, and we want you to pay court costs that the government pays with taxpayer dollars to begin with. So I'm going to play this and pause it periodically.
Hey, everyone. I hope many of you had a chance to watch my lawyer Omar Sheikh in action yesterday. I thought it was pretty awesome. I thought he did a fantastic job representing Sean and me. And I hope you all have good thoughts about what's going to happen. We need positivity here. We need good thoughts. I have a very good feeling about it. We argued that we're not here to discuss whether the shot killed Sean or not. We're here to ask for a chance for our day in court.
Well, and I want to pause this to highlight for those of you who may not understand exactly what happens. They didn't get to any hearing on the merits. It was at a preliminary motion to dismiss that the court says you don't get to have your day in court against the government of Canada. That's what the ruling is. It's not a substantive hearing on the merits. No evidence has been produced. No discovery has been allowed. The government said you don't even get to have your day in court because we never had a duty of care for you, so you don't even get to sue us to get access to documents, to ask questions, and to force us to defend ourselves.
That's it. Give us our chance for a day in court so we can submit new studies on myocarditis, things like that. And for those who are watching, you must have seen at the end that if we lose this appeal, Health Canada is asking for $47,000 in court costs. $47,000.
I'll pause it there as well to highlight these are not legal fees. These are court costs, administrative costs, transcription fees, stenographer fees, bailiff costs, service costs. When you sue, in some provinces outside of Quebec, in Quebec, it's hard to get legal fees reimbursed unless it's manifest abusive proceedings. Other jurisdictions have fee shifting provisions. If you lose, you pay the legal costs. This is just court costs that are incurred by the government of Canada on taxpayer dollars. And that's not to say that the government should squander legal fees and court costs with reckless abandon. They're trying to get a tax-paying citizen to pay their court costs after his claim against that government was dismissed by another federal government agent.
You told him to take it. You told him it was safe and effective. Yet you say you don't have a duty of care for Sean! You're fucking right, you have a duty of care for my son. You fucking told him to take it!
By the way, they told people to take it when they knew of the risks. When they knew of the risks, they concealed the risks, they lied about the risks, and then they say we have no duty of care. Not that we did everything in conformity with the best of our knowledge at the time, because they knew of the risks that they did not disclose, that they only begrudgingly disclosed as it became undeniable. And then they say no duty to care. We can force things on you, but we have no duty to care for you when you are forced, subjugated to undergo the medical experimentation that we force on you. Dr. Mengele would be proud of the Canadian government.
My son's 22nd birthday is coming up in a few days, January 31st. You know how fucking painful that day is? You have no fucking idea. My son is gone, and if we lose our appeal, you want $47 fucking $1,000. Haven't you hurt me enough?
It is full submission that they want. And, you know, it's like they abuse you. They brutalize you. They claim immunity from that. And then they go in to kick you one last time and make you pay for the abuse. Like the mobster that makes the victim pay for the knee brace after they kneecap him.
Folks, this is why it's so important that we fight back. We have to fight this. $47,000 is a good chunk of what the good people have donated to fight. I don't want people contributing to pay fucking court costs. We want justice. Give Sean his day in court. I'm hoping everyone can help us now. We need help more now than ever. $47,000 fucking dollars for losing an appeal? Who comes up with that figure?
You imagine also, by the way, it didn't get into any substantive portion of legal proceedings. This was at a preliminary stage. The government said, dismiss it against us because we shouldn't be a part of these proceedings. And then they come in after that. His vaccine injury support program claim is still pending. They wouldn't dignify it with a response because if they do reverse their dismissal of it, it strengthens the claim against Pfizer. All of these corrupt criminals are in bed together. And I'm reluctant to refer to the judiciary as corrupt or captured. It is corporate protecting the government and the judiciary protecting both of them. Now, Pfizer's going to have that lawsuit's going to proceed. We'll see where that goes. Pfizer's going to argue, well, we have a hold harmless clause with the government. It's in our supply agreement. Didn't you read it? We've covered that at length. The government agreed to hold us harmless for any claims we have to pay. I wouldn't be surprised if Pfizer turns around and argues, well, we don't have a greater duty of care than the government. Why would we? We're one and the same, basically. And then they want $47,000 after the insult to injury, denial of vaccine injury, and after having effectively, if not actually killed, Dan Hartman's son.
When all they basically fucking did was stick to the same shit. No duty of care for Sean. If you can help us, please help us. Maybe $22 for Sean's 22nd birthday, coming up on January 31st. Or even $7 is the minimum donation. Help me fight them. There's nothing in this fucking world I want more than to win!
You all have the link for this now. This is the status of the lawsuit up in Canada. And I'll be following it. Umar Sheikh is the lawyer. The clip is on Dan's page. It's a 3.5-minute clip, give or take, of Umar arguing. It's the same lawyer that was involved in the other grotesque atrocity, but there's a fundamental difference between humans and animals. But the ostrich farm, the ostrich slaughter up in Canada, where the government comes in, brutalizes you, slaughters your animals, and then makes you pay for it, then charges you for the luxury. That's what's going on in Canada. And I keep in touch with Dan. I said, like, this is overt judicial provocation. This is not just a government looking for what they perceive to be justice. If they were, they would have said, all right, we're out and we won't seek court costs against you. No, they want to brutalize the surviving members of the family that they've already brutalized. And they want Dan, as far as my own projection is concerned, they want him to snap. They want him to do something, to resort to unlawful means, because if you don't get your day in court, what are they telling you? If you cannot resolve your differences before the judiciary, people will be compelled to resolve their differences in the streets. And that's not a fear hiding a wish. That's a reality. That's how societies break down. I am thoroughly convinced that the government of Canada and all of its apparatchiks want Dan to break, want him to do something terrible, so that they can then say, look at this man. Has to resort to lawlessness. He failed in front of the courts, and then he had to take it out. I am convinced that that's what they want. They would love nothing more than that. Much like in the Ottawa protest, they wanted a January 6th-ish type event that they manufactured themselves as well. They want the crime. They want to break people to the point so they can then turn around and say, look at these savages. They can't deal with justice, and they have to resort to, we need to govern them even harder. So that is what's going on with Dan. Follow the story. He's on X. Keep it on blast. And when there's news from the court, I don't know, the courts in theory have, I'm not sure if it's the same at the federal rules. They might not even have a time frame within which they have to issue their rulings. It could take 3 months, 6 months. But we're going to wait for that judgment to see what happens on appeal. I'm not optimistic. I'm not any more optimistic about that than I was about the Supreme Court ultimately declining to take up the appeal of the ostriches, which gave the government the go-ahead to carry out their slaughter, because they are agents of misery, is basically what the Canadian government is right now. Agents of misery, obsessed with death and destruction and power and control. And that's that.